Hello and welcome to Your Healthy Mind. I'm Karen Treaster with Never Settle Life Coaching, where we talk about all things healthy for your mind, your body, and your spirit, because they all work harmoniously together. And today we're going to be focusing on mindset and talking about peak performance, the action you need to take and the mindset you have to have for success, who you need to be, the person that you need to be. And I am just, and so much more harmony in your life that you get to have with the success that you achieve. And I'm just so honored to have here Britt joining us. And we're going to start the conversation in a little bit, but I want to tell you a little bit about him. And I also want to say how much I admire him, because he is someone who has so much tenacity, takes massive action, and is so down to earth. And as a great leader, this is what it takes. Britt is an award-winning author of 15 best-selling books and 7 #1 international bestsellers. He is an internationally recognized business and life strategist who is highly sought after as a keynote speaker, both online and live, for all audiences. As an entrepreneur, Jim has launched 28 successful business ventures. He has served as a success strategist to over 300 corporations worldwide and was recently named as one of the world's top 50 speakers and top 20 success coaches. He was presented with the Best of the Best award out of the top 100 contributors of all time to the direct selling industry. He has also spoken in front of more than 5,000 audiences. As a performance strategist, Jim leverages his skills and experience as one of the leading experts in peak performance, entrepreneurship, and personal empowerment to produce stellar results. He is pleased to work with anyone seeking to remove the blocks that stop their success in any area of their life. So welcome, Jim, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Yes. So, Jim, you have a very impressive resume, and I know you have worked very, very hard, and you have an amazing mindset. Did you always have that mindset? Where did that kind of start?
I never really thought of it as a mindset, I guess, but I've never been asked that question. But I think I have, because everything I've always done, even from an early age, at 6 years old, picking cotton. I did that for about 6 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Some of the younger people today don't even know where cotton comes from.
So I was right on. That's pretty darn tedious.
Yeah,
right?
it's hard work. But every day that I would go out, I tried to beat my last day. I didn't try to beat anybody else. I just wanted to do more than I did the day
Is that
before.
right? At that age?
Yeah, and I did that for 6 years. Every fall when the cotton picking season was out in Oklahoma, that's what we did. The family went out, and my brother and 2 sisters, mom and dad, and even I would go out even when I was a young child, too young to pick, and I would ride on the back of my mom's cotton sack. So. But yeah, I've always had that mindset, I think, because when I worked in the gas station pumping gas, which was my first real job, I guess you'd call it, that I've got a W-2 for. And
you're right. It's legit.
But I really thought I was the best gas station attendant that there was in the whole world. I mean, I serviced the people. I went out of my way to help them. I'd sweep out their car. I'd wash their windshield, all kinds of things. So I always tried to do my best. And then I graduated from there to my dream job, which was working in the factory on the assembly line. And I worked there for about 3 years, and there were 9,000 employees. and they rated everybody on an efficiency scale. If you drop below 100% or below 85%, they could fire you. If you went over 100%, then you got categorized in one of the top in the, well, that group above 100%.
Wow.
So you got your name basically on a board.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in less than 2 years, I was number one out of 9,000 people. And I was doing, my efficiency rating was 457% was my highest, which means I was doing the work of 4.57 people.
I just got to stop for a second. That's unbelievable. What do you even attribute to that? What was it? Your upbringing? Was it what? How does one?
I don't really know. I mean, looking back, my dad always had to struggle to make money. He was partially disabled because he fell off on a government job off of a big air compressor or something. And so, but he could still work. I mean, he could still do things, but he would buy and sell and, buy 5 bicycles and that were all broken and make 3 that worked and sell those and buy the others for little or nothing. I saw him one time buy over 200 radios at 10 cents each. And out of 200, he made about 75 radios that he sold for like $5 each.
Wow.
And, he would do things like that, lawnmowers, anything he could fix, cars. He always had a car that he had purchased at an auction and was fixing it up. He had painted, he'd do this or that. And so, maybe that's where it came from. I don't know. I mean,
and not an entrepreneur at heart. I mean, you saw that from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, I think that that's so valuable. And if we don't have that, I know I didn't have that. My parents weren't really entrepreneurs. My father did have his own business, but he never, it was only one. And we get to do that now. And that's where, where you come in, right? Which we're going to talk about for people. Yeah. And so I didn't mean to interrupt, but after you got on the assembly line and you got that award, where did you go from there?
Well, my life changed drastically one night. I was working on the swing shift, looking forward to being off the next night. And I got off at 12:30 a.m. and a fellow walked up to me about midnight and he said, "Hey," he said, "Jimmy, you going to work in this factory the rest of your life?" And I said, "I don't know, maybe." I mean, I didn't know at that time. I didn't have any other opportunities.
You just won an incredible award. You're still high from that, right? It's like, yeah.
Well, I got that every month, so it wasn't anything unusual, but and it didn't pay me anymore. And so he said, when I told him I didn't know, he said, why don't you come go to this meeting with me tomorrow night? He says, turn night off. And he says, I think it's something we could do to make some extra money. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, I don't know. I'm going, well, I'm not your guy. He said, I'm not going if you don't even know what it is. He said, come on, man. They told me to bring somebody with me. And I'm going, I'm still not your guy.
Wow.
He said, I'll tell you what. He said, if you go to the meeting with me tomorrow night, he said, I'll buy the beer afterwards. And I said, what time is the meeting? So I went for the beer, not for the meeting. And there were about maybe 100 people in a room. And I think I shook hands with everybody there. It was all this excitement going on. And the meeting started. It went for about an hour. One guy gets up and talks about the product and what they had, which was a soap business. It wasn't Amway, but it was a soap type business. And I couldn't quite figure out, how do you make money on this? I buy my soap at the grocery store.
Right.
And then the second person gets up and outlines the business opportunity. And I'll never forget when he wrote the figure $2,000 a month up on the board. And I mean, I sat up in my chair because I was making about $350 a month at the factory. And I thought $2,000 a month would be like a dream come true. I would be rich. And so I decided right then that I was going to become wealthy in that business. I said, I can do this. I know I can do it. It was like the lights went on. And big problem, it cost $4,000 to get started. I had $9. And I didn't know anybody had any more money than I did. And that was going to be gone by Friday. And so I went to 23 banks and loan companies until I finally, the last one on the list, 23 filled out applications. The last one on the list loaned me the money. And I think it was probably 50% interest or something. It might have been mafia. I don't even know. I didn't care. I just wanted in that opportunity.
Yeah.
And then the person that was presenting the meeting that night, he said, I'll do a little training with you. He said, your job is talking to people. He said, if you talk a little, you'll learn a little. If you talk a lot, you'll learn a lot. I said, well, how much is a lot? He said, 10 a day. Now, we didn't have internet and, we didn't have anything, computers, nothing. And so I committed to talk to 10 people every day. And the way I did that, I put 10 beans in my pocket every morning. Yeah. And every time I talked to somebody, I'd flip a bean away. So that was my tracking system, and it worked pretty well.
And you did it.
I did. Yeah. Wow. Now those are dried beans. If you're going to try those, they're not cooked. Okay.
So, yeah. Thanks. Thanks for that. Yeah.
So yeah. So I did that for a year. And so I'd spoken to over 3,650 people that year. So at the end of that year, I'm standing in my kitchen. I'm looking out the window and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I thought, I looked out the left side of the window, it's kind of a bay window, and looked over at my driveway and where both of my cars used to be parked, but both of them had been repoed. And I looked to the right side and I see a notice up on my door from the sheriff. My home had been foreclosed, and he said, you have 5 days to get out.
Oh my gosh.
And I looked around, kind of glanced around, all of my furniture had been repoed. Anything that I had a loan against had been taken.
Wow.
And I had a wife and a child.
Okay.
And I reach in my pocket and I had 15 cents. That was it. And I didn't know what to do. I thought my first thought was I'll go back to the factory and get my job back. Yeah. Because I made no money. I had 3,650 people. Actually, one bought a bottle of carpet shampoo. And nobody else bought.
Many people
told me no.
Oh my gosh.
And so I thought about that for about a minute or less, probably 10 seconds, about going back to the factory. And I went, nope, I'm not going to do that. I mean, for one thing, I have no vehicle, so I can't even drive out to the factory. Right. But I had no food, I had no money, I had nothing. And in the next 5 days that I was to be living on the street, it was like a series of miracles took place. I ended up with $300 a week coming in. I ended up with a car to drive. I ended up with a 3-bedroom furnished apartment for me, and another opportunity that was presented to me that over the next 12 months earned me over $500,000. And somebody showed up at my door that day from the company, knocked on my door, and he said, I understand you're a hard worker, but you're not making any money. Can we talk? And we sat in my floor for 2 hours, and he taught me what I was doing wrong and what I needed to be doing to make the business work. And my business took off like a rocket. And I was just a small tweak, because one guy kept telling me, he said, just keep practicing. Practice makes perfect. But what I didn't understand is I was practicing the wrong things. So I was perfecting the wrong things. So yeah, practice does make perfect. Exactly. But so he taught me the things that I needed to be doing and what I needed to stop doing. And over the next 12 months, that business and the other business that got introduced to me as a result of that business, I was a millionaire 12 months later. So 15 cents to a millionaire in 12 months is,
wow. Well,
and it proved a lot to me, I mean, I learned a lot from that. People ask me today, how do you handle rejection? And I said, I don't have to do that anymore. I did plenty of it back then. So,
I mean, I can't even imagine talking to that many people. First of all, I don't know where you find that many people.
Coffee shops, shopping malls. I mean, I learned to approach strangers and have a conversation. so it's not hard for me today because I've had a lot of experience doing it. But anyway, it taught me a lot about me and tenacity and sticking with it. And if you're doing the right things and the opportunity that you're involved in is valid,
Right.
and you keep doing the right things, and you're going to eventually create results.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
doing the wrong things. So once I started doing the right things, it took off pretty fast. So,
Can you share one thing with us?
yeah, when I had the conversation with this man, that, by the way, I only saw one time, and he was like a savior. I mean, a mentor, but a one-time mentor.
I think it very divinely happened.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So what he said was, he said, "Tell me what you're doing." So I did. And he said, "Well, obviously what you're doing is not working."
Hmm.
So he said, "How do you know if you have a good prospect, a viable prospect?" And I said, "I guess if they buy from you." And he said, "No. How do you know if they're even a potential to buy from you?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, obviously you don't." He said, "You have to arrive at 3 destinations in order to have a viable prospect." He said, "Number 1, do they have a pain or a problem?"
Mm-hmm.
He said, "If they don't, you don't have a prospect." Number 2, if they have a pain or a problem, do they want to solve it?
Right.
And if they don't, you don't have a prospect. And number 3, can you solve it?
Right.
He said, "You have to have all 3. He said, "Now, well, I asked him, I said, how would I know if they have a pain or a problem?" He said, "Well, it's really not out there flapping your jaws like you've been doing for the last year." He said, "You have to ask questions and listen." He said, "You have to find out what their pain is." And I said, "Well, what kind of questions?" And he said, "It doesn't matter." I'm going, okay. I said, "I'm really confused. Why doesn't it matter? It should be a specific question." He said, "No, you just start a conversation." And he said, "If you live your life this way, whether it's a business thing you're doing or just you meet somebody casually on an airplane or out on the street or a party or wherever," he said, "if you always be thinking, what can I do to help this person?
Mm-hmm.
Not what can I sell them or recruit them or anything like that, but what can I do to help this person?"
Yes.
And you're looking for the pain. So, I remember one fellow right after that was one of my first person that told me yes.
Yay.
And I met him at a coffee shop, sitting at the counter, and I turned to him and I said, "I've seen you in here before." I said, "Do you work around here?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, I'm all over this area." And I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he worked for some manufacturing facility, a company that was nationwide. And I said, "Oh, do you like your job?" He said, "I used to." So there's a pain that I haven't figured out what it is yet.
Exactly.
I said, "Do you like your job?" And he said, "Well, I used to." And I said, Why did you used to?" He said, "Well, I used to have a 4-state region." And he said, "I built it up and I was making all kinds of money, and they reduced that to 2 states. And I built that up to where I was making all kinds of money again. Then they reduced it to 1 state." He said, "And now I'm in charge of Oklahoma City." And he said, "They just keep shrinking it and I keep working harder." And he said, "I'm not making near as the money I was when I had 4 states." And he said, "So do I like my job?" "I used to, but not anymore." And I said, "Where do you live anyway? What area?" He said, "Oh, I'm over on 33rd Street. I said, "Oh, interesting. I'm on 34th Street. I said, "What's your address, if you don't mind?" He said, 1304. I said, "That's my address on 34th Street. He said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "You have a kid named Jeff?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "He plays with my kid all the time. So you're the street over from me, but there's a house in between us. But yeah,
Exactly.
I can see your house from my house."
Wow.
I'm going, wow, small world. I said, "So you're married? What does your wife do?" And I just get in the conversation. And then he starts telling me that she went to work, but she didn't want to. And they had 2 kids that were older that's getting ready to go to college. One of them wants to go to Harvard. He said, "I can't afford." That's another pain. The
Right.
wife working that she didn't want to, that's a pain. So, pretty soon I collected all of these pains,
Yeah.
and it's like a teeter-totter. If you look at it like this,
Right.
if
Right.
if you can pile enough benefits on that teeter-totter to offset the pain, people
Mhm.
will buy what you have if you can solve their problem.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
if they've got all of these objections over here, but if you come up with the reasons and the benefits to
Mhm.
help them,
Mhm.
to solve their pain, and that's the business we're all in.
Yeah,
Whether
and it goes true for really any business. I was in network marketing too, and yeah, we used to call it qualifying the
Mhm.
prospect, and answering, like you said, the objectives before they even come up was really key. But then the other piece, and I remember the president of our company used to say, very similar to what you heard, and I'm sure you've heard this, but he said, pretend there's a big, and I think Zig Ziglar might have said this, pretend there's a big sign on their forehead, make me feel important. And so I really took that to heart, and really in anything. And that's what, again, with any kind of interaction that you have with someone, when you and I first spoke, and we're working on which I'm so excited about, the Cracking the Rich Code, the book that's out, volume 7. And the relationship, I mean, when we had a conversation, everything was like you were my best friend. I have to say that and that's how you come across.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and you're very responsive, which I really like. Yeah. I mean, that's just
Well,
my thing. So I think that goes a long way. The relation, how you handle your connection with somebody, and how you handle that as well. Because if they don't trust you, I mean, you're easy to
yeah,
trust. And if somebody doesn't trust you, then that's going to be a big problem too.
absolutely. Integrity builds trust, and you
Mhm.
can see that in any relationship you have, in your personal relationships. If
Mhm.
when I first saw my wife before we even met,
Mhm.
um, it was like I would almost have gone up to her and said, will you marry me? But I probably would have gotten,
Yeah.
shunned and pushed away or whatever. But we get in a conversation, and you've got to come from integrity, whatever you're doing, because that's what builds the trust. So in any relationship, and then
Mhm.
trust, if people trust you, they're more open to you. And
Mm.
if they're more open to you, they're more uh, apt to develop a relationship with you. In fact, that's how a relationship gets developed, is openness.
Mhm.
So it's one kind of feeds the other and takes
Yeah,
you to the next level. So
exactly. And
if
and
you
the thing is, you have to be willing to take risks too, like you did.
yeah
And because, for a lot of people who have not heard a lot of no's, it's really hard to
yeah
to get.
yeah you do have to take risk. I mean, but we take risk every day.
Yeah,
Living is risky. Driving a car is risky. Snow skiing is risky. Raising children is risky.
right.
Think of all the things that we do that's risky every day, but we
Mhm.
do them anyway. Driving past the speed limit's risky, but we all do it.
Right,
In fact, I
right.
make it a point to do it. So,
Just to keep
so
yourself honed, right?
not much, but a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, these are kind of the mindsets too. And I know, I want to talk a little bit about peak performance. You, again, I know you take massive action, and listen to your story, talking to 3,000 people. And uh, so is this a big piece of the success that you've had?
Of course, yeah. And I never plan anything. I
Yeah.
mean, I shouldn't say that. If I'm going to write a book, I decide to write one and then I start writing it. But I don't say, I think, my goal is to write a book this year, or I don't even set goals. I don't write them down. I don't do storyboards or what do you call them? Vision
You
boards.
don't. Well, you don't.
No,
Wait a minute.
because
You don't set goals.
I don't, no.
Okay.
I
So,
make decisions as to what I'm going to do, and then I follow
okay.
through. And to me, taking the time to write down a goal means you're probably going to forget it. So you're writing it down so you don't forget it. But if you make a decision to have it, then chances are you're going to get it, because the decision is the foundation for the goal.
Right.
Without that, the goal is meaningless. You could say, my goal is to do that, because I did that for years regarding writing my first book, because I'm a high school dropout. English was my worst subject. Never thought I could write. And it took me
look at you with
10
over
years.
20 books.
Yeah, it took me 10 years before I finally decided one night I'm writing my first book. And it took 14 months with some help. I had somebody to help me put it all together. I talked and she typed.
Yeah.
And in my second book, I wrote 330 pages in 30 days by myself. Wow. Once I figured it out, I could do it. So most of my books are 30 to 60 days, and they're all 300 pages roughly. So it's not that hard once you set your mind to it. But to me, the goal is incremental steps, to get there. You decide to write a book, and maybe you set a goal. Okay, I'm going to write a chapter today, and you work on that until you get it done. And, but as far as setting long-term, short-term, intermediate goals, all that stuff, I don't do any of that.
So you seem like you're very focused. So, and you almost had this focus, and I know it comes from your purpose and, your desire to do something. I think the intensity of your focus. Is that, what would you say to somebody, or how long do you spend focused time during the day? Do you have, on average?
Well, I get up early in the morning. It's like my son, one of my sons says, I said, what time do you get up? He said, 5 a.m. That's when all millionaires get up. Well, I get up a little before that, usually about roughly at 5 o'clock. So, and I spend a couple of hours before my wife gets up. I spend a couple of hours on the computer, answering emails and, sending texts and answering different things and kind of catching up on all of that. And then I go work out. Yeah. And then I come back and have breakfast with my wife. And then I come to my office for maybe 4 or 5 hours, which is about 30 feet away. And, and I leave my phone on the desk when I go back to the home at night. So I don't answer phones at night. That's
great. That is so, you really do. You leave your phone.
I do. Yeah. I have no interest in, if I spend all day working, I have no interest in spending all night working. And I'll have calls on there the next morning. Some of them as late as 9 or 10 o'clock at night. But I tell people, call me anytime you want to. I just won't answer. So. And
honestly, that's the biggest deterrent, right? People with ADHD or just, and I think, I don't know about you, but most people have, a little bit of it, and we tend to get distracted easily.
Well, especially in today's society, because technology it's created so much distractions and so much stress and anxiety and information overload. And, it's just, it's crazy. But they said technology was going to help us be more productive, but I think it's made us less productive.
Well, it's true, because multitasking, actually, I think it brings down your productivity by 40%.
Yeah. Multitasking is getting nothing done.
Getting nothing done. That is so, and that's kind of freeing, really.
Yeah.
to know that. I like that. Multi getting nothing done. Oh my gosh, I love it. Yeah, when your mind is open, like a computer, right, with all the tabs open. I mean, it's so hard to focus because then you're getting overwhelmed and you're thinking about this and
Yeah.
that and
Well, you mentioned in my introduction, I help people remove the blocks that stop their success in
right,
any area of life. So it
right,
doesn't matter because if you're carrying around an extra 200 pounds, you're also carrying around something that's causing you to carry that 200 pounds. If you're carrying around, unable to make ends meet financially and it's been going on all your life, you're carrying something around that's stopping you from having that happen.
right.
And we all have programming where in a lot of our programming becomes robotic. And what I mean by that is we do it the same every single time.
Mm-hmm.
You pick up your toothbrush in the morning to brush your teeth. You don't say, which hand should I use today?
No,
You just grab
all
it,
automatic.
and you do it the same every time. And there's probably hundreds of programs. Driving a vehicle is a good example. Walking is a good example. Talking, all of these things, we're all programmed and to some degree a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
We all do things a little different than the other person, but it still becomes second nature to us and very robotic in a way. Now we still have free will and using our imagination, that type of thing. But I discovered this about 15 years ago. No, I'm sorry, 35 years ago.
35, okay.
35 years ago. And I was wondering why people don't follow through with what they say they're going to do. And it's because these blocks that they have.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
and what those blocks are, so you take the positive side, like walking and talking and all of those things that really would be very difficult to live our lives without.
Mm-hmm.
Then you switch to the negative side and say, okay, if we have the positive side that becomes second nature, we must also have the negative side that becomes second nature.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know we're doing them. Now, we may know we have the problem. We may know that we're in a series of abusive relationships,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously we don't know how to get out. Otherwise, we'd get out instead of repeating the pattern.
Right.
We can be aware that we're struggling financially, but awareness doesn't do anything. It just tells you you've got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't give you a solution.
Right.
So the solution is what I came up with. I mean, that was the biggest aha moment for me when I discovered this. And it took me about a year and a half before I figured out how to help people to let go of that.
Mm.
And what you're really letting go of, let's say you've got a memory. We all have a memory.
Right.
But let's say it's a file on your desktop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's our memory. We can look up there and see it anytime we want to. We can remember what happened to us. But there's also a charge around that memory. There's an emotional charge holding it in place.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get rid of the emotional charge, you still have the memory, but it doesn't surface like it did before. It doesn't get triggered because the emotion is what triggers it. You may see somebody that reminds you of somebody else, or you may, having maybe that emotion in an abusive relationship. Maybe you've been told you'll never amount to anything. You'll never have a successful relationship as a child, even.
Right.
So you've got that feeling inside, nobody loves me.
Mm-hmm.
And you're projecting that out. And sure enough, you're going to attract people that won't love you, that will abuse you. So it's the same way with anything in our lives. We develop those programs and it keeps us from getting there where we want to go. So what I've developed is a way to help people let go very quickly, discover the problem, let go of the charge or the emotional energy around that. So it's like taking that file on your desktop, putting it on a hard drive and throwing it in a drawer. You remember it's in the drawer, but it's not going to bother you anymore.
Exactly.
Now you can move forward freely. And it sounds simple. Well, actually, it probably sounds complicated, but it is simple. It's not, because it has to be simple for me. Otherwise, I can't do it.
Right. Yeah. You've simplified it. That's.
Yeah. And then I learned money is a big issue for people.
Absolutely.
And I would say the average working person spends about 80% of their waking hours going after money, but 90% don't have enough. So there's a problem there.
Yeah.
So it's the programming we have about money. But to change all of that, I'll give you a few simple things that you can apply.
Great.
To change that.
Great. Our audience is going to love this.
Actually, it applies to any area of your life. It doesn't matter what area it is, if you want to change something.
Okay.
So first step is you have to have a desire to change. But most people have that desire, but they haven't experienced enough pain where they are to push them, to the next level,
right?
Or they're not disgusted enough about where they are and how they're stuck to be able to move to the next level, which is the next step, which is decision making.
Right.
Because we're always weighing out the pain of changing.
Yeah.
Somebody's sitting on their sofa eating potato chips, watching TV, got the remote in their hand, and complaining about what they don't have, and saying, one of these days I'm gonna get rich, or one of these days I'm gonna start a business or something like that. But then they stop and they go, well, how much time is that involved in that? And I wouldn't be able to eat these chips anymore and watch TV. So I need to weigh out which is most painful. I kind of like these chips. So
I just
think I'll go with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can totally relate to that. I had a fear that I had to get rid of, one of those blocks you're talking about. And I do NLP, and that's, one of the ways that I can do that. But, and that was fear of success because of how much work I had to do.
Well, that's it.
Right?
Success
I don't want it to take up all my time.
It's strong. It's as strong as a fear of failure. It right. Really is, right. Because when you think of success, you start putting all these responsibilities on yourself.
Yes.
And you go, well, I won't have any time to do this or that and we always weigh out those two and decide one way or the other. I just never liked chips. So
that was easy. Yeah. Well, and I don't like TV, so that was an easy one for me. I like the pain of changing.
I know that you have to endure some pain.
Yes.
So step one is desire. Step two is making a decision to do something about it. And the decision, if you take this circle, and that's a full 100% commitment.
Mm-hmm.
But most people make their decision and leave a little opening somewhere.
Just in case.
That's their excuse. That's why it didn't work. Couldn't make sales calls in the rain. You couldn't expect me to do that, or whatever.
Right.
They just come up with these things. And, you give somebody a great opportunity and, oh, well, the timing's not right. And somebody said that the other day. And I said, well, I don't think God ever, when they present you with a great opportunity, I don't think God checks your calendar to see if the timing is okay, or your bank account.
Isn't that the truth?
You just,
That's a great response.
Every great opportunity that I've taken advantage of, it was never good timing, ever. It's in the middle of all of the stuff I'm doing, and somebody presents me with something, I'm going, come on, man, I just can't. But then I look at it, and I just did one about a month ago, and I waited a week, and the person said, you need to do this now. And I said, no, man, I'll look at it. So it took me a week, maybe 10 days. And then I put some money into it.
Mm-hmm.
But he put the same amount of money 3 weeks earlier. He's so far has made $750,000, and I've only made 150,000.
Yes. Money loves speed, right?
Yeah. So I just didn't, I saw it as maybe an opportunity. I might do something or whatever, but it's passive, but it still took some time to look at it.
Those are the best kind.
Yeah. So you've got to decide if you want to be wealthy, whatever that means to you.
Right.
And wealth could be wealth and health, wealth and any relationships in any area of your life. But if you
Right.
want to be wealthy, let's just say financially,
Mhm.
let's say you want to have $1 million in the bank, then you have to decide you're going to become a millionaire. Not how to get there. That doesn't matter, because
Right.
until you make the firm decision, that closed circle, until you
Mhm.
do that, the opportunity to get there is never going to show up in your viewpoint.
Right. Right.
They say a law of attraction works, but it's really the law of creation. It's the law of cause and effect. Somebody says, I'm 110% committed. I'm going, no, you're not, because there is no 110% commitment. You're either committed or you're not committed, one or the other. So I always think they're blowing it out of proportion and they're not really committed.
Yeah, you're right, right, exactly. And it's the energy, you're right.
Yeah.
The energy you put out is the energy you're going to get back. And
Yeah.
it's the money that you're going to get back. The more
And
energy, right?
and you talk about, you mentioned mindset.
Mhm.
Well, a decision creates the mindset,
Right.
and the mindset determines how you show up to the world. And more importantly,
Absolutely.
how the world shows up to support you. So without the mindset, everybody's got one.
Right.
And if you want to know what it is, just look in any area of your life and see what you have. And that's your mindset in that area. So it's simple. It's cause and effect. It's a law of cause and effect. We cause the effect.
Mhm.
And we don't see the opportunities till we decide to have that in our lives.
We do, and that cause, just by making that decision alone, our reticular activation happens in our mind, and things start coming to us. And it doesn't, as you said, it's not created until we at least, it's like anything you do, even when you're, I was a former personal trainer, when people made the decision, okay, I'm going to do something, well, this isn't a great example because there's so many people who don't follow through with going to the gym. However, once you make that decision, you already get excited about it. And it's already working inside
it creates a passion,
Right.
And you mentioned a reticular activating system. Just this is a good example. You're walking through the airport and you hear announcements going on.
Mm-hmm.
This plane's leaving, whatever. You don't pay any attention to it.
No, I was going to say, or not. I don't.
And until somebody says, Jim Britt, your plane is taking off shortly from gate number 3. The doors will close in 3 minutes.
Right.
And you hear that loud and clear.
Right, exactly.
That's your reticular activating system, because you made a decision to get on that plane, and now you're hearing something that's important to you.
Yeah, you're like
same way
with everything that's
it's the same way of seeing something that's important based upon the decisions you've made. And then the next step is you have to take action. And in today's world, it's got to be bold action. I mean, you've got to put yourself in the spotlight. Was it hard for me to go and talk to 3,650 people? Yes. Did I have times when I wanted to quit? Yes. Did I doubt myself during that time? Yes. But I kept going. Okay. I mean, some days I'm just going, I can't do this anymore. And the next day I get up and go again. And was it hard to find 10 people to talk to in a day without the use of internet and all of that?
How do you overcome doubt, or did you? I mean, because that's such a big thing for so many people.
Your decision has to be strong enough to create the confidence to keep moving forward.
Right.
And confidence is so important in anything you do. It doesn't matter if you're speaking or coaching or whatever. You got to have the confidence in what you do. So
in bringing that up, I want to say a quote that Jim Rohn said, and I know he was one of your mentors, correct?
Well, we were business partners.
You were business. Okay, so I want to hear a little bit about that. So he said, success is something you attract by the person you become. So can you talk to that a little bit?
Well, that's kind of a different way of saying that you create based upon the decision you make. So what you become that decision,
right?
And you attract. I take it to the next step is you create it. He said, what you become, you will attract, and you attract who you are, basically. So work harder on yourself than you do anything else. become better, because every life level, every income level requires a different you. You can't have the same you and attain that unless you accidentally hit the lottery or something. But if you don't change you, you're going to be right back where you were before long.
That is so true. Now, can you give us any, any hints as to, one thing you could do to change what you're
Yeah,
thinking about yourself?
a couple of things. When you make decisions and when you take action, you'll always be confronted with doubt, uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
But your decision has to be so strong that it keeps you moving forward, and you're willing to experience that doubt and uncertainty. You're willing to, well, somebody said or asked me a question at a conference one day on a panel. They said, what's the one thing you've learned beyond anything else that's been the most beneficial for you? And I said, the power of letting go. And because
Love that.
if you're hanging on to something that disempowers you, you're not going to go anywhere. You've got to let go of what disempowers you. That's the key. Not speeding up and keeping all that stuff inside. You got to let go of it. People say, well, it's hard to let go. And I'm going, no, it's not. If I'm holding this mouse in my hand, I don't have to hold it in my hand the rest of my life. I can put it down. If something happened to you 10 or 15 or 30 years ago, you don't have to keep carrying that around. You can let it go. Right. You cannot allow that to affect you today, because it's not happening to you today unless you bring it into today. And then if you bring it in, then it's happening to you. If you still feel today that nobody loves me, well, it's just as valid today as it was when you experienced it.
Yeah, it's still showing up, and unless you do something, and that's the thing, you got to be willing to do something about it. And
I'll give you I think a powerful concept.
Okay.
To accomplish anything you want in your life. I mean, these things are critical, I think, what I just covered here, but
they've been great.
So I had, it's probably, I don't remember how many years back, probably 30 years ago or something. But this fellow and I used to read the same book at the same time, and then we would kind of collaborate on that book and learn from each other. What did you learn from this page or this concept or that? So he calls me one day and we're going over some page that he wanted me to read and then discuss. And it was a very in-depth book. I mean, really, if you ever want to read it, anybody, it's if you can find it, it's called The Impersonal Life. It has no author. It's written from you to you.
Okay.
So it's pretty unique, but very in-depth. Anyway, we're reading this book, and right before we hung up, he said, Jim, you know what the word resourceful means? And I said, never really thought about it. I guess maybe using your imagination, becoming more productive or something like that. And he said, yeah, I guess. He said, just an interesting word. I said, yeah, okay, I guess it is. And that was it. So later I'm driving home and I couldn't get this word out of my brain. Resourceful. It just kept going on, and kind of like, don't think about a pink elephant. I mean, It's just like, oh, it's going on and on and on. So I get home, and of course there's no internet. So I go pick up my dictionary and open it up to the word resourceful. And the definition was, once again, full of source. And I went, that's interesting, depending on what you think source is. So I went and looked up the key word in there, source. And the definition was where all things originate. All things. Didn't say some things. It said all things originate in source. I'm going, wow, that is powerful. Again, depending on what you think source is. So then I kept looking for another definition of source. And I looked for probably a year and a half or 2 years. And I'd go into bookstores and I'd look up origin of words and different things. And I'd try to find old books or different versions of dictionaries and stuff. And so I'm in England, a little town called Chester, and walking down a sidewalk, and I kind of look up this little alleyway, and I see a sign that says antique bookstore over this door. So I love old books. So I walk in the back door, and as soon as I walk in, there's a dictionary, literally this thick. It was all torn and tattered. It looked like it was really, really old. I don't know how old it was. I didn't look. I wish I had. But it said, do not open. And of course, I thought that was for people in the UK, not for me.
Yes.
But I was prepared to buy it if I destroyed it. I think. I don't know what they wanted for it, but it might have been $50,000 or something. But I opened it up very carefully and looked up the word source. And I saw some of the same things that I'd seen before, but one popped out at me. It says, source love.
Oh, I'm
Once
getting
again, full of love.
goosebumps.
So think about this.
Wow.
When you decide you're going to do something, you've got one of two choices. You can either fall in love with it or you can fall in fear with it. And if love is where all things originate, you know, it's the passion you have for what you're going after. That's the experience of connected to love, where all things originate. Exactly. And then fear can pop in sometimes, but you've got to have the ability to let that go. And so I thought, man, that is powerful. And then I thought about it for a little bit, and I thought, wait a minute, there's a flaw here. And I said, if all things originate in love, where does fear come from? And I thought about that for a couple of minutes, and I've gone, oh, love is where all things originate. You fell in love with fear. You've created it out of love. It's love presenting you with fear, saying, if you can handle this, you can have more of me.
Exactly. What we give attention and love to is what, you get more of it. So
you gotta fall in love with what it is you want to accomplish, what you want to have in your life. You know, you gotta stay in love
and
with it.
Fall out of love with fear. Let go of your love, or right.
It's literally you fell in love with fear.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
It's just it's
attracted it.
It's a made up story. Somebody says, well, there's real fear. And I said, no, there's not. He said, well, what if a bear is chasing you through the woods, or a lion or something? He said, that's real fear. And I said, no, it's not. You're making it up in your mind what's going to happen if that lion catches you. You know, I said, now I would run fast too. But you're still making it up in your mind. So you're creating that. You know, you're not afraid of heights, you're afraid of falling. I'm saying, you're not afraid of you're not afraid of heights, you're afraid of widths. If you're on a short little ledge, but if the ledge is 50 feet long, it's okay.
So, but you know, and it's that gap of the anxiety, you know, that you have. And that's the thing I always find, you know, with me, like I can be, even though I'm a calm person, I can get really anxious, but that's what happens. You get that anxiety and fear, you know, starts just bubbling over in your head, and more things. It's like, you know, let's add some more.
You know where that comes from?
The future, thinking of the future, right?
Well, it's called stress, anxiety,
right.
Which both work hand in hand. And that's a combination of anxiety, is a combination of fear, anger, and depression, all rolled into one. One holding you back, one pushing you forward, and one keeping you inward. But the reality is, what causes that is trying to control circumstances and people over which you have no control.
That is so true.
That will stop
really good
pretty much all stress.
Yep.
My wife is always saying, doesn't that bother you? And I'm going, no, I have no control over it.
You know, and
but they're doing, I said, no, I have no control. Said, I don't know how you do that. I'm going, well, you practice it. And it's called the power of letting go. It puts you in your power. And I'll guarantee you, once you develop that as a habit pattern, and I don't want people to believe me, just try it one time. Try setting it aside and saying, okay, I have no control over that. You're going to see your productivity double, triple, quadruple.
Well, I absolutely hear you. That is such a good point. And I know when I get into that situation, I just let it go to God, and I'm like, you just take it. and I find that I'm not connected as I
Well,
should.
that's what you're really doing. You're just
Yeah,
turning it over.
I'm connect exactly.
Yeah.
So that's such a powerful thing. And speaking of that, yeah, we're going to get to your gift in just a minute. But I just
Okay.
wanted to touch on, you said you were partners with Jim Rohn.
Yes,
What?
we were best of friends from about 1970 until he passed away, and we were business partners for about 8 years.
Wow,
Yeah.
that must have been incredible.
Well, you know, Jim was the trainer in the direct sales company I got involved with.
Oh, wow.
And
Now I
basically
want him for an upline.
he was basically unknown,
Yeah.
except within that company. And we
Wow.
developed this partnership, and I started promoting him, and it took off like a rocket. We were putting tens of thousands of people monthly through seminars.
Well,
So
that's why you get the best of the best awards. You've been with the best of the best, and you put the right. And
well, that's how I branded myself in the beginning, as getting
Yeah.
to know the top people in the industry. And there was only
Right.
about 20 of them back then. So most of them are in my cell phone, if they're still around, or the number may still be there, from Jim Rohn to Dennis Waitley to Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and Mark Victor Hansen, Jack Canfield. I mean,
Right. All incredible people,
Yeah.
and that really is the key. And that's why I am, again, it's an honor to know you. It's an honor to be in the book that is out, the Cracking your series, which
Yeah.
is incredible, and just all the people involved. And that's what it's all about. It really is.
Yeah, we have a great series. I launched our new community platform, a social media platform that's designed strictly to enhance the lives of our members. And the membership is free.
Right.
So
And hearing
pretty cool.
incredible content.
It's called the richcodecommunity.com. You can go there and check it out. But that's
Absolutely. Check that out for sure.
Yeah.
So Jim, this has been really fascinating. You've given some really great value here and tips for
Thank you.
everyone. So I know you have a free gift. What is that free gift that you have for everyone?
Well, I've got there's 2 audios that are about an hour long each.
Okay.
So you want to sit back and block out an hour to listen, but it's called the Rich Code, or Rich Code 1, the number 1.com, and
Okay.
Rich Code the number 2.com. And I guess you'll probably send them a link there.
You have the link in the email.
Yeah. And they're the audios really, it kind of goes into more detail of what my first mentor taught me, and the more detail about the things that I just mentioned, some of those traits that we need to be able to accomplish the things that we want. It's just and a lot of things that hold us back in life too. So it'll be an enlightening couple of hours. You'll love it.
Oh, grab that. That's going to be incredible. I want to go in and listen as well. I think that's fabulous. Well, thank you so much. And it's been wonderful having you on here. Do you have any parting piece of advice that you can give everyone?
Yeah. I was in Toronto, Canada a few years ago, and was out for a walk. My friend and I, that we're doing an event together, and we'd gone out a little bit too far. It was like 5 miles out, and he looked at his watch and he said, "Oh my gosh, we got to get back." He said, the event starts here shortly. And I said, well, it can't start without us because we are the event. So, so we started walking. I'm 6'4", so I have pretty good long steps, and he was tall as well. So we're walking as fast as we can. We're down Yonge Street there with a lot of tourists, and we're walking in and around people and stopping occasionally for a light. So all of a sudden I feel this presence right here like right here. And you could feel the energy, and you could hear the guy breathing, and it felt like he was like this close to me, walking in step with me. And I was just about to turn around and go, "Hey, buddy, back off a little bit." And just as I started to turn, he said, "And God created man." And I stopped and thought, okay. And then there was another voice that came out of him.
Wow.
And it said, well, I know that. He said, but then God created woman. He said, yeah, I know that too. Different voice. He said, then God created fruit. And the other voice says, fruit? What does fruit have to do with anything? He said, well, inside the fruit, there's a seed.
Mm.
And he said, if you plant it, it will grow. And if you don't, it won't.
Mm.
And when you plant a seed, you can't just plant it and leave it.
Right.
You got to nourish it. Unless it's a weed, weeds grow automatically.
Yeah.
But the seed is the decision that you make to have something in your life. And you plant it where it's going to grow, where all things originate. You fall in love with it.
Mm.
And once you've decided to have something, watch the actions you take, because every action you take is either going to move you toward that or away from it. Success at anything is that simple.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Create your destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nurture your seed.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
watch it grow. Wow. Fabulous advice. Thank you so much, Jim,
My
Britt.
pleasure.
Pleasure. Yeah, mine as well. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you next time. Bye for now.